This is the budget hearing for the Newburgh Dundee School District. And at this time, anybody who wants to, we have a podium set up here so that people who are zooming in can listen to your concerns or what you want to say. So I think our procedure will be if anybody who wants to just raise your hand and then come on up and then you introduce yourself and then the next person can raise their hand. So if there's anybody who wants to speak, the podium is yours. Thank you. After a informal discussion, we've decided that we'll wait about 7 minutes until about 20 till. And then if no one wants to speak by then, we'll just close the opportunity for community input for the budget. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Margaret Lemaster. I've been a citizen of Newburgh for over 50 years. I had two sons who graduated from Newburgh High School, and I have served on various ESD committees and on the county budget committee and been involved in the community. And I want to just express my gratitude for the help that has stepped forward at this crisis time and with the school board who's having to live through this. And I have great confidence that things will be worked in a very bad situation in the best possible way. And thank you for all serving.
Okay, this will be the last call for anybody who might want to speak at about the budget. And if anybody knows someone who they think is coming and is arriving late. If not, yeah, we waited till 20 till. I think at this time we'll go ahead and call, we have a extensive agenda. So I think we should just go ahead and go on with that. So I'm going to call, the meeting to order at this point at, 5:40 PM. And we'll stand and have the flag salute. At this time, the board will be recessing to executive session for under ORS 192.660 2B to consider the dismissal or discipline of or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or an individual agent who does not request an open hearing. ORS 192.660 2D to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. ORS 192.660 2F to consider records exempt by law from public inspection, and ORS 192.660 2H to consult with legal counsel regarding the legal rights and duties of the public guard with regard to current litigation or likely to be filed. The representatives of the media can come to this, but any deliberations that said about the subject during executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced, no decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, return to open session. Media can be excluded for the following reasons: when the board meets with labor negotiations to discuss bargaining strategies, when the board meets to consider expelling the student, when the board discusses a student's confidential record, and when the board discusses litigation against a district or community college in which the reporter's media organization is involved. So at this point, we will adjourn to executive session. And thank you for all of you who are waiting. regular session now, and we do have some additions and to the agenda that I know of. The first one is an action item that will go under the budget adoption resolution 2425, and it will be supplemental budget for 22-24 resolution 2024-6. And another action item, it will be a contract for a firm called Bose Hamilton Allen Incorporated, INC, and Dr. Radish will explain that. And under reports and presentations, Clay Downing with the City of Newburgh is going to come and explain a little bit more about the enterprise zone. And so I think that's the additions and corrections that I was given. Are there other additions and are deletions to the agenda? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead with the report, and Clay Downing from Newburgh City, it will be first, so he won't have to wait through the whole meeting. And Mr. Worthy, looks like he's here also. Thank you. Yes, go ahead. And then
And I'm not a planner and I don't play one on television. Your support,
so just make sure you turn your mics on and get them close so everybody can hear. So go ahead.
Will do. So thank you for having us. Like the chair said, my name is Clay Downey. I'm the planning manager for City of Newburgh. So thank you for letting us join you again. And
Will Worthy, librarian and city manager.
so we're here to respond to some of the questions that were received about the enterprise zone the last time that was presented on June 11th. And the city's moving forward with a redesignation for this item, and we're asking for the school district to select a school support fee. And so we've got a couple of slides to go over things, and I basically want to keep it pretty short, but wanted to do a quick overview on some of the highlights. We received some feedback that there's a lot of information, and that the school board, we would like to make sure that you get the information and take it in and really have the chance to make a good decision. And so that's what we want. So I want to highlight some of those things a little differently. And then also highlight some of the responses to questions that were asked at the last hearing. And then there's a couple of scenarios as kind of some examples that we wanted to be able to share with you this evening too. So on the next slide, we have one of the things I wanted to highlight was maps. So we were asked, how many of these programs are there? And so in the state, the latest map that Business Oregon has, Business Oregon administers this program and local jurisdictions can opt into it. And so there were 74 programs as of 2021. That's what this map is depicting. But then in addition to that, there were the latest report of where there was activity in the various programs showed that in 2023, there was activity in 54 of those programs. So that doesn't mean that they don't exist. I'm just kind of highlighting, not every single program necessarily has an applicant every year either.
And so it's a very common mechanism, but you'll see that in some cases it exists and nothing might happen in a given year. But then when a certain capital investment spins up, then it will become active.
And so we've seen that here too. So our program was spun up in 2014, and there were several years where we didn't have any applicants doing anything with investments. And so we have had several years where there's basically been, and we'll go through that in a later slide on what the activity levels were. But some of the high level items to remember is that this program allows for a 100% exemption on taxes associated with certain qualifying improvements by a business. So if it's an existing business, that doesn't mean that it gets to pay zero taxes. That just means if it invests more in that business, into assets or into personnel, that new investment is exempt from those taxes. Just that
The margin.
right. So also that there's a period where a school support fee comes into play, and there's a portion of that where it's not in play. And so most of these enterprise zones, a standard enterprise zone period is considered 3 years, and then there's an extension to 4 and 5 years. And the school support fee is in effect for years 4 and 5, but not for years 1, 2, and 3, if that makes sense. And then there's no limit on the number of times that a company can apply for this. So each time that a company enters into this, it's kind of like taking in a new project, a new application, they get to initiate it. But if they finish, they can come in, as long as that program still exists, they can request to do it again, should they choose to.
But for it to have a substantial property tax impact on that part of assessed value that would have gone to, for example, the school district, there has to have been substantial capital investment at the site.
So thank you. On this slide, talk a little bit about some of the qualifying items associated with this. So qualifying minimum investment is $50,000. For new companies, they're required to have one new employee. For existing companies, it would be a 10% increase in the first year in employment. The city has adopted a waiver where there's certain other relatively challenging criteria need to be met if they want a waiver to the employment criteria portion, but they can do that. And if a business wants to do an extension going beyond that 3-year period into the fourth and fifth year periods, then the jobs that are provided as part of it need to be of a higher quality. They need to basically pay 150% of the county average to their employees. So that's what we mean by when we say kind of a higher quality job. The graphic that you see on this slide, that's a bit of the process that we've taken to get here today. So since some of the text is a little small, I'll go ahead and read that out, going from left to right, kind of with the big arrow there. Meeting with Business Oregon and consulting with them, since they are the program administrator across the state. And so we're just opting into their program and implementing it locally. We provided notice or public notice and notice to the consultation with the taxing districts, including the school district. That's included a specific meeting just with school district personnel in April, and then a separate meeting that was with all the taxing districts, including the school district, also in April. So that was something that we did in preparing for this. This item has already gone to the Yamhill County Commissioners for approval and support, because there's a portion of the enterprise zone district and mapped boundaries, which later slides will show again where that map is, what it looks like. But there's a portion of it that falls outside of the city limits, so that's why it went to them. And then we're here tonight presenting to you, asking for the school district to select a school support fee. And then and so that's obviously where we get to the gray boxes there, because they're not done yet. But we'll go on to there to take it to our city council, and then we'll submit all the documentation showing that we took these steps to Business Oregon. And that's how redesignation works.
I would say that there are a couple of initiatives that have been brought to our attention recently involving large firms that have expressed an interest in knowing whether the program will continue. Unfortunately, for one of those initiatives, we're not at liberty yet to discuss it because Business Oregon has given it a code word. But we are competing with another state to get a certain business, and they're looking at the mill site. And that's just one of the things that we're weighing up at this time.
The enterprise zone is overlaid mostly on industrial land, so things that have industrial zoning. So they're not things where you would find neighborhoods or you would really even find commercial enterprises. You'd find mostly industrial items, so manufacturing and those sorts of things. And so it's not covering the entire city. It's just a limited portion of it. Over the years, we've had about 6 applications or kind of folks that have kind of felt out interest and have started submitting materials and consulting with us on these sorts of things. Most of those dropped out. We only had 1 applicant engage in the program. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, they entered in approximately 2017, and then they ended up not meeting some of those criteria when they entered year 4, and they were eventually disqualified. And that is not a characterization of them. They just no longer were able to continue in the program. And we're hopeful they'll join the program again sometime in the future. So there we go. So now we're getting into some of the responses to the questions from the last time that we visited. So one of the questions was, what is the value of participation in tax abatement that has been realized by Newburgh's Enterprise Zone program to date? And so a couple of the bigger numbers associated with that were that there was a total of $1,845,930 that were kind of the assessed property that was invested locally in Newburgh. That resulted in a tax abatement of $21,145. And if you just look at the taxing district shares associated with this, the share for the school district is approximately 38.2%. And so the share of that would have gone to the school district was $8,077.
So the other taxing districts all saw by ratio some portion of that $21,000.
Now, one of the things I would also note too, some of this is an estimate. Year to year, the tax rates can vary slightly. So we're using some of the most recent best available that we have from those. So that's a projection, essentially. Next question we had was, what occurs if no selection of a school support fee rate is made by the local school district? Could non-selection delay or block redesignation? Which was a much better question than I thought, because I thought it just hadn't come up yet as a question that we'd encountered. But the answer is, if one is not selected, we cannot move forward. So personnel from Business Oregon let us know that the way that the statutes are written, it says that a school support fee shall be selected. So that doesn't give us much wiggle room on when one doesn't get selected. So they said their interpretation would be that it cannot move forward unless one is selected.
Therefore, you guys have the veto.
So that was a surprise to us. Had we known that, we would have shared that earlier. So on this slide, so this is the one where I decided to squeeze in the map because I had a little extra slide space. So the bright teal areas that you see in the kind of bottommost quadrant near the river, so that's largely the mill site, but also other nearby industrial zoned areas. And then there's a little, that other teal area that you see kind of up forward and kind of west of center is kind of along the rail line. There's some industrial zone land over there too. But this is not all of the industrial zone lands in the entire city. And as a matter of fact, I actually don't know how they selected these lands because it was in 2014, well before I arrived. And frankly, our planning division doesn't have any staff that have been here since then.
No clue.
Yeah. So it's one we've been wondering ourselves. There was probably a rationale behind there. We just don't know what it was.
But I will say that given the mill site coverage there and given the fact that that overlayment also matches the urban redevelopment district that has come into being, it's kind of a force multiplier to have that cover.
Right. So if the whole point is to have assets, and they're assets that are not intended to be things that you can move to another place. So you can't do rolling stock. You can't buy fleet vehicles that you can just drive to your other campus. You have to do things that are truly assets to that location. They
Like a
can't-
furnace.
Right.
Or
So-
such.
So qualifying things that won't leave that are investments and assets on the site. And so one of the other questions that we received was, does the school district have the ability to modify the school support fee rate once established? If so, how and how often may that occur? And again, Business Oregon gave us a pretty prompt response and said, nope, you only get to set it once, and that is at redesignation. So, and this would be something that carries on for 10 years. And so this program would not be due for resignation or redesignation again until 2034, but the legislation is due to sunset in 2032. So it doesn't mean the legislature couldn't say, we like this program, we're going to continue it. They could certainly do that, but we don't know. So right now it's set to sunset in 2032. We wouldn't be up for redesignation again until 2034. And you only get one shot at the school support fee as far as a selection. All right. So this is just a couple of essential facts that I kind of broke out in talking about the school support fee and the tax districts. It's somewhat to set up the next couple of slides where we talk about kind of get ready for the scenarios and to talk a little bit about the numbers and try and make that terrible one pager of just numbers that was given to you at the last meeting to kind of put those into a couple of examples. But so the school support fee itself, it's important to realize that it's only applied at years 4 and 5 in those extension situations. There could be applications that come in where it never comes into play because they only occur for 3 years, for example. So that's what they call a standard enterprise zone, and those years 4 and 5 are referred to as extensions. The selection of a fee would be at 15 to 30% in whole percentage increments. The only exception to that is at 22.5%, where you get to a 0.5% right in the middle of those two. And then the tax districts kind of going into the rates and those sorts of things. So the overall figures that we were using for these estimates were approximately 15.8998 per $1,000 for assessment. So those are the figures, with the school district's portion being approximately 38.2 of that. And if I remember, well, I'm not going to say there's an actual number behind that, how we got to the 38.2, it's 6 point something, but I just don't have it in front of me. The other tax districts are listed here that we included. Basically, they're all of the tax districts in the city participate in this, but the largest share of the overall tax base goes to the school district. So there's a vested interest. And I think that's probably, if I were to envision why the school support fee exists, there was a desire to recoup some of those costs that are kind of borne by the school districts, specifically because they have such a large share in many communities. So that's what I would imagine. On the next slide, we go a little bit through these processes. I tried to put a graphic in here that captured a bit of a step-by-step pathway on where the money's going and how it's kind of split up. So the one at the top grays out some of the steps that don't happen unless you get to those 5-year extension periods. So in each circumstance for any given project, there would be an investment that would have to pay taxes and results in kind of an annual incentive because you have that investment, which gets taxed and leads to the incentive because that tax gets abated. And then that results in an impact to all of the taxing districts, including the school district. But when there's an extension situation, so at those years 4 and 5, there's an investment that gets taxed, results in incentive. Then there's a school support fee at year 4 and at year 5. And then you kind of get a net incentive. So you've modified that incentive to the business. It's been reduced by the school support fee. And then you end up having whatever gets abated for the business is what the tax districts don't get. If that makes sense. Before I move on to the scenarios, are there any questions about that? Because I tried to make it so that it was easy to capture, but there's more, this is a simplification. So if there are questions, that's perfectly acceptable.
I think this is the bit where I'll do the short game, long game pitch.
Sure.
Okay. So there's a short game piece to this and there's a long game piece to this. The short game piece to this is, yes, there's some portion of property taxes that you would be giving up, and that's a difficult thing to hear right now. But the long game way of looking at this, long game meaning 2 or 3 years, is that if a company is willing to do capital investment and the proviso is that they will then bring jobs to our community, what else will they bring to our community with that expansion of plant? And remember, we're talking about physical plant. It's not a theoretical thing. It has to be nuts and bolts stuff. Well, of course, they're going to bring workers. And the workers will probably have families and they will probably have kids. And so increasing the school role is clearly of more value to the school district than a small margin on property taxes.
And what I would add to that is that there are a number of mechanisms associated with the way that things go into taxes. And there are some sides of the tax and funding of schools that I am not familiar with, and Will is probably not familiar with because that's not really what we do.
We only swim in the property taxes.
We do have some local things that are different in Newburgh, like the construction excise tax fund and those getting collected. So there are unique kind of local fund mechanisms that happen here. This would be a unique local program, and there would be a school support fee that would be attributed to that too. That would be part of that selection.
But nothing is given up unless a company does a capital investment.
Right. So it's still on the new stuff, which we don't really know if that's going to happen ahead of time. And so we hope that they invest, that they stay here, that the investment stays here too, and kind of boosts the tax base, boosts all the benefits that come along with it.
I don't know if somebody over here might have the answer. With the state school fund, is that I guess the difference in property taxes we wouldn't receive, would that be made up for in that percentage of how all of our money comes in, be changed by that, or would it not be, because it's not actual money that we have, that would affect that calculation?
So not getting local property taxes does affect what we get from the state, because it is a formula overall. The key, I think, the question I have is that my understanding is that the school support fee does not come directly to the school district. It goes into a pot that becomes part of basically the state school fund and is redistributed across the state.
May I ask a question from a position of complete ignorance? So formulaically speaking, like in terms of the algebra, if there's a property tax reduction and at the same time there's a school roll increase that occurs, how does the formula generate? Does the total amount of money go down, or is there a scenario where it would go the other way?
So if you have more students, more enrollment, you're going to get more from the state as long as your ratio is still going up, right, across all of the other districts. If you're going up more, right, the total being added to the lump sum at the state that's being distributed across the number of students. I think the key is it does have an effect on the state school fund, but if the value is relatively small, it's not going to have a giant impact at the beginning, and it is on incremental costs. So you're not giving up what you already have. It's just the possibility of more only for 3 to 5 years, and then it rolls on to the rolls. So you will see an increase in your property tax rolls. It's just going to be 3 to 5 years out.
Okay, I guess, yeah, and that answers it. Just to be super clear, I'm thinking, let's say it was 20,000 in 1 year. It wouldn't be, they see our property taxes that we took in as whatever we actually took in plus 20,000. It would just be the actual amount we took in. Perfect.
Yes, just the actual amount we took in.
Thank you.
And I guess I was just curious about, if you guys lost $20,000, but you gained 300 children, how would that net out?
That would be a considerably a very large increase, but
Okay.
It would have to be something.
Not that I'm trying to put a price on children. But, I just think about money.
The key is you say they have to at least have one new employee. So we don't know what that value is going to be of how many students it's going to be. But if it's for millions of dollars, it'd be a little different scenario.
And these next two slides will characterize a little bit on the sorts of investments that we expect and what the school support fee might be expected to look like, what those annual incentives look like, and then also what the lump at the end is as a result of the program. So I wanted to try and get the activity that's happening year to year, as well as what does that turn into down the road at the duration of the program. So what we're looking at here, this scenario is assuming there is a $500,000 total investment over the duration of a program, and that there's a school support fee that's set at 15%, which is the lowest end of the spectrum. Then if we just presume, just because we need to start, I need to put goalposts on there, that it's about $100,000 per year for that 5-year duration. So that's the rate at which the investments are occurring. Then that annual incentive that's received by the business, the tax exemption, is $1,590 approximately. The school support fee, both years of it, years 4 and 5, at 15% would be a recoup of $477. And then the net incentive that the business experiences, that abated tax, is $7,473. And the school district's portion of that is $2,854. So I don't know your budget, but I'm going to characterize more or less that is probably not a substantial portion of the budget, would be my guess.
And I would suspect that a $500,000 capital investment would probably lead to the generation of 10 to 15 children.
I don't have that in my slides, so I don't know how that.
I'm just guessing based on how many workers, 5 or 6 workers at least.
I thought I saw someone reaching for a button. Was there a question?
2 kids per family.
Yeah, I just want to double check. So the school district impact, could you, I guess, is that the negative net impact over those 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be the taxes that, if it weren't for this program, but the investment had still occurred, then the school would have received.
Not counting the net positive on children.
Not counting the net positive on children. So this one's for a larger level of investment. This is for a $10 million investment, but with a higher percentage on the school support fee. So, and I apologize, I only wanted to do 2 scenarios. I did not want to get too much because I felt like the sheet that we shared last time, it just had too much information on it. It was hard to tell what the important stuff was.
So we did a big one and a small one.
Right. So this one, $10 million. And so a 5-year program assumes $2 million per year in investment locally. And so that would be an annual incentive occurring at $31,800 per year. The school support fee at 30% at that point for both years 4 and 5, so they've been added in this figure, is $19,080. The net incentive that the business experiences is $139,918. And then the direct impact to the school, so the funds that the school does not receive, would be $60,731 over a 5-year period.
Now, all humor aside, if the one offer that is speculating right now on the mill site comes in, that will generate 280 children. Because it's 150 family wage jobs. Now, okay, maybe not if some people already live here. But if we say that the net transportation of new workers is half of that number, that's still going to generate 140 new children.
So that's where the city's pitch, obviously, is that we think this is good for Newburgh overall. We're looking at it, the city's perspective, mostly from economic development, recruitment and retention of important family wage jobs that we think are of high quality here in Newburgh, especially knowing that we've got a 100-acre mill site where this would be a ripe tool to use there.
So
So
we're finally getting interest at last.
Mhm. So
Real quick question. So it seems like these negative impacts to the district are more in the future. There's not, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's not as much like this upcoming year. These are, if they sign on, if these companies that exist or come on, this is what we'd be giving up down the way, not this year. Because our big concern is obviously this budget crisis we're in right now, but
Right.
I'm really hopeful we won't still be in 3-4 years. from
you would
now.
you would only be abating funds you don't have yet. So you're not giving away, there's no money that's given away from the coffers that we have. This is essentially kind of speculative things. And
There's
in
no
theory-
chips in the poker pool yet.
And in theory, there's some of these funds might not be getting invested in Newburgh if it weren't for this program. We can't really characterize the extent to which that happens or not. It's speculative, but it's meant to be a carrot to get those jobs and investments here in Newburgh and for them to stay here so they get kind of a one-time good for the business and then it stays on the tax rolls here in town. So that's what we hope for. And so with that, the request is for the school district to select a school support fee. And if that doesn't happen tonight, we're okay with that. We still want it to happen. We've been told, so our program, just so that we're all clear, is scheduled to sunset or to expire on June 30th of this year. There's no penalty from the state if it lapses. We just can't work within the program while it's lapsed, but we get to redesignate it. So they've said administratively, we can pick it back up. We haven't said like for how long, but it's been communicated us thus far that we're not expecting a problem.
And we put every tool in our toolkit that we can imagine to get businesses here. We spent 2 years reforming the system development charges, and it was extremely math intensive and hard work. We also have created an urban redevelopment district, which covers the same territory. This is another tool in the toolkit to try and get business here.
So this is my last slide. There's one more, but it just says thank you. So thanks for having us. And I also want to say that we do truly appreciate your time. Interim Superintendent Radich made time for us on a Friday along with the chair and the chair and the vice chair to have a chat, to get us on the agenda, bring us back here. We understand there's a lot of other things going on. We think this is important, but there are a lot of other important things that your agenda is full of. So we appreciate the time.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you. I think that's also really important, as we talked about in our last meeting with our declining enrollment, different things that we can bring in. So that's really interesting to me and of interest, I think, because long-term we want to, when I'm done here, I want to hopefully see a lot more kids here and not have this happen again. I do have 2 questions. One is, what is the city of those? Does the city have a position on which of those percentages they were hoping, because you have insights with different businesses? And then my second question to that is going to be to the smarter people in the room than me, what they're what that impact might be on us. So, and what recommendations.
I would say that given that we're marketing hard to get business here, the only number that would be the worst number would be no number. So don't use your veto, please. Other than that, you have to balance this with your economic questions that you're grappling with. But we want to be able to show any business that's looking at this city, we can do this and this and this for you.
I guess then my second question would be those with numbers backgrounds and doctorates and more degrees than I have. If there's a recommendation that you all would have for us, so or any thoughts you might have.
My only thought is you want to keep something still as an incentive. So going with the highest rate may not be the smartest thing. Going with the lowest rate obviously also is not, in my opinion, the smartest thing either. So that's really all I can tell you. I haven't had experience with a district actually being part of an enterprise zone where they set the rate at that time.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions?
Is this an actionable item at this point or no?
We didn't put it on the agenda as action, but we could put it on July 9th. And if that would be okay.
Although it does sunset on the 30th of June, is that correct? So is that lapse of time appropriate or?
It sets, it's scheduled to sunset on the 30th. Administratively, it should not create any problems for us, and we can see if we're able to just bump the agenda item forward for city council too. And we can verify with the business organ that it's not going to create a problem, but I do not believe that it will. And we do have 2 applications that have been submitted recently where folks would like to participate. They're both businesses that are already here in town that would like to work on this program, but we can always communicate on them. They know that we're doing the redesignation. And if that's going to make the school board more comfortable, then I think the school board should take the time it needs.
I do have one last question.
No, her buttons.
Oh, it's my light. Hazing the new girl. I know that the sort of 1 to 5 years starts with that capital investment or capital improvement. Is that after establishment, after initial investment in Newburgh? Like I'm thinking about the mill site. Can a company apply the moment they're on the ground and in the city, or is it after they've done their initial business establishment here?
There is an in construction portion where they're eligible for certain qualifying costs, but they just have to be part of what the state of Oregon's kind of program allows. But they do have an in construction benefit that they can take advantage of. So they could put that towards the assets that they construct here, as long as they're part of that list. But overall, yeah, I believe that's part of it. So the most thing is they don't want to invest in things that you could take off the site. So forklifts, bad things. Fleet vehicles, bad things. Buildings, perfectly reasonable, because that's where you got to put your workers.
The one outreach that we've had recently, though, has indicated, and if it all goes through, we can't say yet the name of the company, but if it goes through, they will want to be operational in 12 months. That means they're going to be building capital equipment in August. It will be happening. And it's only half of the mill site that they want, if this works out.
That's a pretty optimistic and aggressive construction deadline. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, when they said that, we're like, really? You think you're going to get that past DEQ that quickly? But we shall see.
I just wondered, I guess I'd feel comfortable if Galen, if you would have time between now and July 9th, if you had a recommendation, because you have worked in finance and looking in other districts or anything, it would, I comparison shopping.
I think especially in light of, our budget issues, but also like we've talked about, like growing the city and growing the city and population would be very beneficial long term. So
If there's any other comments?
I would just to say thank you for coming and explaining this a little differently than, it was like, woo, like a big flood over my head, but as I had said, we weren't really prepared for that conversation that night. So, and apologies from our end on that.
I was pinch hitting, and so I really appreciate the getting a second chance to I sincerely hope that this was more helpful this evening, and appreciate the time that you all have made and that everyone has made in helping us out with this.
And thank you very kindly. We really appreciate all your service. We're all in the fight together for this community.
I'd like to express my appreciation both to Clay and Will for meeting with us last Friday at 4 o'clock. So it was a long day for you, but we greatly appreciated that. And also just your enthusiasm and your pride in growing our community. So I want to thank you very much. And Clay, well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Budget update is on the agenda now.
Hopefully we've got a PowerPoint there. Okay. So we can go to what I'm going to start with is our current financial position. We've are almost done with the year, and we have projected revenue to date of $59,470,705. That is all of the state school fund that we're going to get, all of the bulk of the property taxes. There may be one small tax turnover that comes in, but it won't be a significant piece. And I don't have an estimate for that, but the pieces that I do have do know that are outstanding currently, and I have verified these today with both the county and the ESD and the Common School Fund, are that we will get another $528,000 for our ESD apportionment, another $296,000 for our Common School Fund, and County School Fund of $16,000. So those are the biggest pieces that I foresee coming in. So that would give us revenue of $60,311,295. Our expenditures to date, which include all of our payroll run except for a small final payroll that will be run on June 30th. So all of our payroll has cleared through. And any purchase orders that we've paid to date. So that would be $60,643,978. We have encumbrances of a little over, 1.4 million. I have checked on those, and the bulk of those are solid encumbrances. They are for things like the last electric bills, for the final payments on our transportation contract. Those types of pieces are all expected to come in. So I think that's a fairly solid number for our encumbrances that we know of at this point. So that would leave us with 62 million and change in expenditures, which leaves us with a projected ending fund balance. At the current moment, we're estimating about 1.7 million negative. As we look at what has sort of made up the bulk of besides payroll, which is 79 to 80% of our budget, these are the pieces that we are over budget from 23-24 adopted budget. They're all in purchased services, or the 300 objects. As you can see, we've had some pretty extensive expenditures in professional services contracts. The other pieces that we are over are repairs and maintenance. We had some extensive HVAC work that had to be done this year. Most of that is now setting us up for hopefully not having as many repairs in the next few years. Our electricity is considerably over what we were budgeting for, and they did bump the budget this last year, but we will be in need of having that increased. you've all heard about the student transportation contract that we were under budgeted. We still have about 684,000 over what we budgeted for. Legal services are just shy of $200,000 more than what we budgeted for. And general professional services, which goes along with the other contracted professional services, they're just not instructional professional services. Classified substitutes, we've used more classified substitutes this year. However, what I will tell you is that we've had a fill rate of at sometimes only 30%. So there's a need for us to deal with our classified subs as well.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Since we're on this, like, what, can you break down the first line item more? I mean, 1 million, what's all in that bucket?
In that bucket, there are contracts for certain of our speech language pathologists, for our occupational therapists, for pieces that we don't have employees within the district who can provide those services. So we've gone outside to contractors to provide those. So as we look at either mitigating factors or other things that we need to look at, even though we won't receive our May adjustment for the current year for 23-24 until following May, I'm looking at a positive adjustment at this point of probably close to $2 million, which we have not accounted for in the approved budget. So there's some wash there that will be good for us next May. That's due to the fact that and this year we over budgeted for or under budgeted for property taxes, then we over budgeted for, and so when you send it into the state and you say we're going to get 22 million and you only get 20, the state has given you less state school funds, so you will get some of that back. The unknowns that we still have out there are legal expenditures for the rest of this year and possibly into next year. And I wanted to let you know that although it won't have a budget impact, a financial impact, we will probably have an audit finding this next year for the 23-24 year due to a misappropriation in the budget for this last year in the bond fund. So incorrectly identifying the appropriation level as enterprise and community services when it should have been classified as capital facilities and construction and acquisition. So that's just to let you know there's no financial impact to it, but it will direct financial impact, but it does affect our audit, and it could affect agencies looking at us. So that's just a heads up on that one. So what are the implications for both the 24-25 budget and perhaps beyond? We're looking closely at the current professional services contracts, and are there options for us to either bring some of those services within, hiring someone within, or are those services that we can get through the ESD? Are there other options that we have to bring those contract expenses down? Even though we have bumped some of the purchase services budgets within the 24-25 budget, we're still going to need to bump them some more to cover those areas that I talked about, specifically repairs and maintenance, electricity, reimbursable student transportation, legal services, general professional services, and classified substitutes. That's saying that these will probably increase the estimated shortfall by anywhere between $1 million and $1.5 million that we'll need to find other areas to decrease because we can't not pay our electric bill. And finally, for years beyond, we're
Okay.
and currently,
Excuse me, Gail,
sure.
can you pull your microphone a little closer and maybe speak a little louder so that the
Certainly.
audience can hear?
okay,
Thank you.
sure.
It's always a trick for us, so.
Yes. So we're implementing a staffing allocation model so that we can equalize classes according to enrollment decreases that we've experienced across the district. We are also identifying permanent reductions, hopefully to replace the furlough days in the current year's budget, because that's a one-time reduction. We either have to take another series of furlough days or we identify permanent reductions for the following years. And to do that, we're engaging the community and to help us identify some of those budget reductions. That, as a going forward, just a possibility would be the likelihood of going out for a local option levy. That's something that's been done in other districts. It takes a lot. It's a heavy lift, but that's something that should be on the table. And that's what I've got for you right now. We're working hard. I would say the one thing I do want to say is that the business staff has been phenomenal getting information and helping with absolutely everything that they possibly can. So props to them.
I have a question about the HVAC. Is there a reason that money doesn't come out of the bond? I mean, that to pay for HVAC within the buildings?
So it really depends on what your bond, how your bond was written, and what you're allowed to spend that money on. Usually you have to have a line item for continued maintenance or deferred maintenance that would cover those things, because it's not a specifically allocated item.
Okay, because we've had the bond folks come and say, hey, now we have $5 million left and should we do turf? And I
And like
mean,
I
I
say, it
would
depends
really
on what the
like to look at the
language
bond
is.
and
Mhm.
what could we be spending on that for maintenance? I get the idea of turf, but I think we really need to be paying attention to some other things.
First of all, thank you so much for all your help in this last couple of weeks or however short it's been. Really helpful. I do have a question. That 1 to 1.5 million extra shortfall, not that we built it in, but will that state school fund adjustment help deal with some of that?
So you can look at it kind of two ways. We have an almost $2 million negative ending fund balance that we have to fill. And then we have another 1 to 1.5 million. We've got 2 million basically to help offset either of those pieces.
Are there other questions for Gail? If not, thank you very much. And I assume these slides will be available and on posted. Okay, thank you. Budget status, Dr. Radish.
Thank you. This time I'd like Leslie Carsley and Claudia Stewart to come forward and just be seated because they will be making presentations here shortly. And then Ben Burkhart, if he would come forward also, please, for a moment. So Ben, if you can come in camera range so people who are zooming, if you turn that way, I guess they can see your face. So I want to take the opportunity before we go any further to introduce and thank some individuals who are just in addition to our current staff who just really are amazing, to introduce some folks who have stepped in to also assist us. So you've met Galen Jacobson. Galen is a retired finance director from North Clackamas and Beaverton school districts. She comes highly, highly recommended. I have really enjoyed working with you, even on Saturdays. We try to reward her with a little bit of a lunch. But anyway, she is just a remarkable woman, very, very bright, and has very clear. Her communications are exactly what we need in terms of understanding the position that we're in. Also, I'd like to introduce Claudia Stewart. Claudia, raise your hand. Claudia worked in the Newburgh School District for at least 25 years and more recently as a communications director. Claudia and Julian are a great dynamic duo. They are teaming up to help us with our bond communications and the parent listening sessions and all things bond and budget. Huge amount of work on budget, as you can well know, and they're sifting through probably thousands and thousands of input from individuals. Some really fascinating and creative ideas from our community and our staff. And I'd like to introduce Leslie Carsley. Leslie is also retired, and Leslie served, she retired after 39 years. Was some of that in Dayton? All in Newburgh. Okay. So we were blessed with Leslie's presence for 39 years. She's probably most notable for her principalship at Edwards Elementary School. And Leslie had a wonderful relationship with Joanna Austin, who donated the 10 acres for Joanna Austin Elementary. Leslie was the planning principal for that school and was the administrator of that school until she retired. I want to comment that both Leslie and Claudia are working at no charge. And then behind me on the silver screen is someone returning to his roots here. Ben Burkhart was a counselor at Mountain View, and I hired him, and he even remembers our interview. Ben is returning, though. He's currently an assistant principal at Hazelbrook Middle School in Sherwood, but he's morphing into our coordinator for all things maintenance, grounds, facilities, transportation, all of those things. So Ben, we're delighted to have you. I think his counseling background will come in handy as we go through this difficult process. So Ben's a wonderful addition to our staff and really looking forward. He doesn't begin work. He's still finishing out work in Sherwood, but we will see more of him July 1, unless you're planning to take vacation. No? Okay. So thank you. So I'd like to begin this budget presentation with an overview, a little bit of the budget, a little bit different than the numbers. So first of all, how deep is our budget hole? What are the budget reduction criteria that we've established? And what are the savings and efficiencies? And I want to give a little bit of a transportation update. So let's look at how deep is our hole. When we say 12 to 13.5 million doesn't mean a whole lot. But if you said to someone, that's the equivalent of 57 school days, that sort of gets your attention. Now, please don't walk out of here and tell everyone we're cutting 57 days. We are not. That's just an equivalency so you understand the magnitude of the hole that we're in. Or if you're a car lover, 171 Ford Expeditions Limited. Or if you're a homeowner, 20 $600,000 homes. Sometimes we just have a hard time grasping what those numbers really look like. And the reality is when it comes to children and services, it's much more than that. We laugh, but it's really the reality of how it's impacting our classrooms and our staff and students. So you're aware that we had a gathering of representatives from the associations, from our leadership team and the board. We had a planning time where we identified a consensus criteria for budget reductions. And the idea here is that we have a filter or criteria and we will match our budget reduction recommendations against those criteria. And you can see that the main one is to maintain the core academic programs. Then also, obviously, legal compliance, contract compliance, equitable, and then preserving safety and the things that are good for our staff and students. So let's look at strategies and efficiencies. Given our very difficult and collapsed timeline, I'm recommending that we streamline the negotiations and consultation processes with our associations. And that includes a change in the district's bargaining team from a team of 7 to 8 people to 2. That would be myself and representative from the Human Resources Department. I've met with the associations. They are in agreement with this. They may bring as many people as they wish. There's no limit on the number of folks that they will bring. If need be, we will bring in expertise for certain aspects of the contracts. I don't anticipate to need too much of that, but that would be available. In fact, the president and vice president of the Newburgh Education Association met Galen. We connected by phone, and I believe they're meeting with you tomorrow. And I think that's really important that they get their questions answered, because we're going to be asking, unfortunately, for a lot of sacrifice among our staff. One thought that I had that we just to talk about is we have schools with small populations. Is it possible for some of those schools to function on one level if they're a two-story building? For example, Joanne Austin has two levels. Creator has 2 levels. Can we possibly manage on one level and reduce costs by not, we'd have to heat some of that space, but we wouldn't have to clean it. So I haven't talked with principals about that, but I think that's something we can look at. One of the issues that Galen raised with us is an extraordinary large number of contracted services. We have got to get that under control. Many of these services, not all, are costing more than if these are individuals we had within our own system. Those costs are exorbitant right now, just in terms of if you're looking at the general budget. As Gail mentioned, there are a number of strategies that we need to implement in terms of these budget reductions. We also already mentioned class size ratios, but it's not just classroom teachers. We need to look at specialist ratios, physical education, music, and so forth. Furlough days, custodial service, custodial distribution by square footage, not by building, but by square footage, which is what we used to do in the old days. And it may have been done since I've left here. I don't know, but we're going to look at that. And Galen has all the square footage, so we're going to look. But I also understand that there are anomalies in buildings, and we have to take that into account. Just as there are with specialists and staffing, we'll try to give a frame where everything is the same initially, but being cognizant and very understanding of any unusual circumstances in any of our buildings. The other thing we're going to talk about, we have 3 work groups planned for tomorrow. One of the areas we're going to discuss is what can our parents and community do to help us? And I had an interesting conversation with our maintenance and custodial staff. Ben and I met with them last week. And one of the comments that was made was, it's wonderful to have help, but let's be very strategic about what that help looks like. I may come in and I might wash windows, and Aubrey's going to say, Paula, you're the worst window washer I've ever seen. So we need to be sure that whoever comes has the capability, and we also want them to be safe. We don't want people on ladders and creating liability for the district. But we've had a number of people ask what they can do, and our job is to identify very specific areas. One concept, and I know you're familiar with it, George Fox University has a serve day, and I visited with the president of George Fox today at some length, and we talked about how we might leverage some of the George Fox students within classrooms, but also to serve in other ways within the district. So that's just tonight. Those are just a few of the many ideas that are there. I also want to correct the record, and I apologize to First Student, they are a transportation contractor. As we talked about over expenditures in the budget, I mentioned that transportation was overexpended by $1 million. And I met with the area representative and our local manager for First Student. And what I discovered was that the contract that we had with them was for 5.1 million. The budgeted amount was 4.1 million. They've actually spent less than the contracted amount. So I apologize to First Student. They were doing the right thing, and we are talking, we identified 4 or 5 efficiencies already in transportation that they helped me with. So I want to talk a little bit about the next steps, accountability and due diligence, our process timeline, what's on the horizon, and then us and them and we. So under accountability and due diligence, I'm going to recommend to the board of directors that we conduct a forensic audit. I am not satisfied that we know all the answers. Anytime there's this massive of a change, I would recommend the board do this due diligence and make sure there's nothing that we have missed in the system. So I will be bringing a proposal to the board on July 9th, requesting a forensic audit of the district. And I may request that we go back 3 to 4 years. I also want to make clear that the superintendent has a recommended list of reductions. And I think I frightened some of the staff when I said that I began to write those at 2 o'clock in the morning when I wasn't sleeping. And they thought that probably I wasn't being very clear when I wrote those. I'm still working on that list. I do have a list. I want to be really careful with it. And I want to inform the community at this time, I am not recommending any program cuts. I'm only recommending that we apply our ratios and see what that yields in terms of program. However, this hole is very deep. We may need to go to program cuts at some point. I'm hoping not. I don't know. But initially, that is not on my list. So what's next? I mentioned we have 3 work groups tomorrow. And those are people that volunteered to come in. We'll talk about savings. I may change the contract services to another topic, but also to identify community supports. Our listening sessions with our community will be from 6 to 8 on Thursday of this week at the West Commons at Newburgh High School. And then again on Monday night from 6 to 8 in the West Commons. The board and budget committee members who are present here who are able to come, we would hope that you would join us and sit at a table and listen to our community regarding their input regarding budget reductions or savings. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have ongoing contract negotiations, and including we have a fairly elaborate process for reduction in force. It's very complicated. You have to be very careful because these are people's lives. And so we have individuals who have background in that, and they're teaming up, and they have already done some work, and we're going to continue the work. So let's talk about a little bit of what Gay Ellen raised. What's on the horizon? The governor just released some information on the next biennial budget. So as you know, school districts are funded in 2-year increments, the biennium. So this budget recommendations are not for 24-25, but 25 to 27. So will they help us now? No, but it's the silver lining at the end of the year that we might look forward to. Gay Ellen mentioned the possibility of a local option levy. I have strong feelings about being very careful with that. I want to look at the tax burden. I want to go out and get community input. The last time we looked at local option levy, for all the work it entailed, the amount of money coming to us was minimal. It was a drop in the bucket. So we need to be careful. I want to be mindful that people are already suffering in this community and don't want to add to that burden. If the board wanted to go out for a local option levy, we are not able to do that for the November election. We'd have to file and get all the information in August, and that's simply not possible, nor is it wise. The next date for election would be May of this coming spring, if we go that route. And again, we'd need some analysis. I don't want to frighten people. I'm not personally leaning that way. The other real negative about local option levies, once they expire, you have to go out again. So I worked 16 years in the state of Washington. Washington funds schools at 80%, or at least they did when I was there. So local districts had to go out every 3 or 4 years for a levy called maintenance and operation. And if you were fortunate, your community passed that. but some communities did not. There's no guarantee once you plug a hole with a levee that the community will continue to support that. So it's not my favorite thing to do. And I'm hoping that we have some other ways of going, but I think it's only fair to bring that to the board's attention. So I'd like to end, I think, with this final slide. There has been in this community an us and them mentality. And I've only been on the job a short time, but I've been privileged to be portrayed in the social media in all manner possible. I'm going to continue to look forward. And I didn't read the social media, somebody sent it. We have to stop this divisiveness. And my way of doing that, we all need to put our nose down, go to work for our kids and do it together. So I would hope we could get to we in this community. If individuals have concerns about me or the operation, please make an appointment. Let's talk. Let's not create all this chaos, because every minute we spend on the chaos is taken away from our children. So that concludes my comments today. Are there any questions from the board?
Thank you, Dr. Radish. Thank you very much. Enrollment study? Leslie Parsley?
Thank you very much. Good evening to Dr. Radich, Newburgh School District Board of Directors, and members of the district office staff who are here at the tables. I really do consider it an honor and a privilege to be back in the Newburgh School District supporting Dr. Radich, you, the staff, and the Newburgh Dundee communities in serving in this very important work that needs to be done. The work that needs to be done is working to find out why our enrollment is declining. First of all, I really want to thank Tanya Penninger and Ruth Markham for their help and their wisdom in accessing the necessary data to begin this work of what we are calling the Newburgh School District Enrollment Study. I met with Dr. Radich last week and have her vision of the work to be done. I've spent time reviewing the current data and have established a plan as we move forward in this very important work for our school district. Currently, according to the data, there are 208 students who have withdrawn from the school district, and this equates to 178 families. 9 of those families are Spanish speaking, and Martha Frack, who is the Spanish interpreter for the district, has either already or is in the process of making phone calls to those families. I've written a script which has been reviewed by Jillian and by Claudia, and this will be used by those making the phone calls. I want to be really clear that it is imperative that whoever makes the calls is using the same script. We need this in order to be able to compare apples to apples. I've also composed a series of the same questions that will be asked of our families when we make these personal phone calls to our people. The questions are in a Google form. And so what we will be able to do is to type in their answers, and that will immediately go to an Excel spreadsheet. And then we'll be able to, that'll just make that data much easier for me to compose, to prepare. Hopefully, my goal is to have that ready for you at the July 9th meeting. The questions that we're going to be asking are, how many children do you have who attended the Newburgh Dundee School District? What grades were they in? What schools did they attend? In what school or academic setting did you enroll your child if you chose to withdraw them? Why did you choose to enroll your child or your children in a different academic setting? And in your opinion, what would need to change in the Newburgh Dundee School District for you to re-enroll your child or your children in their neighborhood school? I'm going to be real clear when we make these phone calls to these families that this is totally confidential. Their names will not be attached to any of the information, and this is for information only so that we can plan next steps moving forward. And as I said earlier, my goal is to have all this information ready for you by the July 9th school board meeting. Any questions?
Yeah, I appreciate the transparency of your plan here. You said 208 students. Is that just this year or this year, last year, or what is?
It is those who we know of that are going to be, are not enrolling this year, this next year, the 223-24 school year.
So from this current, the last year where we just ended to next year, we're dropping 208 students?
No, it's from 223-24. So those 208 students are from this current last year. Correct? Yeah.
Okay.
And I will tell you that in my looking at the data so far, the majority of our students are at our high school. We have 49 seniors, according to the data. Now, I don't know if that means they chose to enroll in another school or if they were here, you know, did one program at here and another program at another place. So those are things that I need to figure out. So I'll be able to speak more when I get more into the data. It's a work in progress at this point.
Well, it sounds like a really good plan, and thanks for everything that you're doing,
You're
and
more than welcome.
that's going to be really good data for us to have.
Do you think that there's any way to adapt what you're doing and almost create a, I don't know, a hotline where families who maybe have left previously could have a way to give this information that could hopefully lead us to making different decisions that might positively impact student enrollment going forward?
That could be a plan. I'll write it down. We'll check it out. Thanks. Any other questions?
There are no further questions. Thank you, Leslie, and we'll look forward to July 9th. Communication plan, Jillian Daly and Claudia Stewart.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jillian Daly, and this is the amazing, inimitable, and fantastic Claudia Stewart. And she has been like a rock who's guided me, a guiding rock, a star, a North Star. Okay. So first of all, we worked on this, but strategy, she is like the backbone of our strategy and has been there every step of the way. The goal currently is to ensure school employees, students, and their families are well informed about the school district budget situation and begin rebuilding confidence in the school district's fiscal management. And this will be a long process, but we can do it. So that's the goal. We have objectives to achieve that goal. Communicate, inform using key channels, engage, and listen. One of the things that we have been working on is to create a budget website where people can share their thoughts. And it's just, there's a button on the main page and you can just click right on it and just look at all the budget information. We're still building it out, but it has a lot of the things on it. We have a Q&A that we're going to be adding, all the links, all the documents, the budget feedback email address, the proposed budget, just added today, and just a slew of things, all the latest news, everything all in one place. So you can just click on it. And that is the QR code for anybody who is richly, deeply interested in just going straight there, but it's just a budget right on the main page too. And our first objective is to collaborate. And one of the ways that we'll be doing that is involving school leaders and all employees, families, and students, and the wider community, and providing updated, accurate financial information, and creating and sharing a lens for evaluating proposed reductions, which was the criteria that Dr. Radich mentioned earlier, and sharing what the actual reductions will be. We're going to have the timelines and calendars available as well, so you know what's happening when, and that's also going to be on the budget website.
If you're a regular recipient of school communications, if you're a parent, a community member, or a staff member, I hope you have noticed an uptick in the communication from the school district about the budget. Jillian has been focused on getting that ongoing information out that people need, and she's been doing a great job, and it's only just beginning. So, engaging with our stakeholders is a key part of a good communication foundation. Okay. You've heard that expression, 2 heads are better than one. Last Tuesday, we had 30 really very impressive heads and thinkers in the room when the school leadership team, the association leaders, and 2 board members, thank you, Jeremy and Nancy, came in to sit down together and talk about what they need to develop in terms of criteria to go ahead and evaluate all the suggestions for the budget reductions. Paula's slide shared what their outcomes were, that criteria that included the legal and contractual compliance, the safe environment for students and families, equity, and certainly maintaining a core academic curriculum. So we are still engaging more good thinkers, and that landslide started when Jillian sent out the invitation to all the parents, all the district staff, asking them for their input on what they thought would be good methods of savings. What would be reductions that will help us get to where we need to be next year? I'm drowning in their feedback. We've gotten hundreds and hundreds of emails from entire staffs. Principals went back and engaged their staff. Individual parents are writing in. Community members are writing in. When they're talking about reductions, mainly we're hearing about staffing. We're hearing about transportation. And then we're also hearing a lot of creative ideas about adjusting days and hours to reduce the budget. Savings, lots of suggestions about savings. They run from saving paper, getting copier passwords so you don't use so much paper, to energy savings. Turn the AC down, dim the lights, get solar panels, unplug the coffee pots. They've got lots of granular and lots of big ideas. Reusing curriculum materials. They'd like to, or they're suggesting, many are suggesting that there's a review done of how the facilities are being used. Is there a way you can be more efficient with your facilities? Consolidating spaces. Paula gave the example of operating a 2-story school on one level to save maintenance and perhaps energy funds. They'd like to see a review of the curriculum to see if it's equitable. How do you do that? Balancing that with state and federal laws they have to comply with. There were great suggestions about fundraising and donations, but my absolute favorite is use the village. And one parent wrote in with very descriptive groups in the communities and ways that can be used. And we'll make sure that that work group gets the information as well too. So, and we've also asked the staff and the parents to submit their questions that they had about the budget. And that was really very revealing because it not everybody knows there's a terrible budget crisis. Some people are just becoming aware of that. They wanted to know how we got to this point. They wanted to know about accountability. How will you ensure accountability in the future? Um, they had questions about facility use, about consolidation, transportation, and they have a lot of questions about how schools are funded. So we have to remember as we're going through this process, school funding is very confusing. Galen told you about, yes, you're getting money in May, but it's May of 25, and that's not going to help now. And the other part she didn't tell you that you probably know is that the state of Oregon can also reach in and take out money anytime within a 3-year span. So it's not easy to understand. And lastly, of course, the community and the staff and the families wanted to know, what is the plan? How are we going to do this moving forward? So anyway, so the next listening is the third leg of our strategic plan on this. And we've got that permanent budget feedback email address, and we will be encouraging people throughout the year to use that to submit questions there. As board members, you're active listeners. You have public comment regularly at your sessions. You have email addresses that are a way to hear what the public has to say as well. And Paula mentioned that we will be holding listening sessions this Thursday and next Monday. I'd like to describe that just a little bit. This is a 2-hour drop-in window of time. This is not come in, speak to the audience, and take turns getting up at the podium. Board members will be seated at 3 separate tables. Your job is to listen, not engage in conversation, but hear what their comments are, what they're thinking. You'll have a yellow pad. Hopefully you'll be taking notes, and we'll incorporate that in our community feedback as well too. There will be information materials on a table. We're going to have a monitor set up to see probably this PowerPoint and the PowerPoint that Paula did last week for the meeting as well. And if people don't feel comfortable talking to you directly, we'll have a table set up with some comment cards so people can go ahead and write their comments and leave them there. So I would really encourage people to come and, talk with a board member face to face, get a little bit more information and provide some comments for you. Hopefully that will be useful. This is what we've been doing the last week. Jillian will continue to get her ongoing communication out. We will continue to find ways to engage the staff and the community and listen to everyone to hopefully rebuild trust in the district's financial management and make sure everyone understands what in the heck really is going on. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, this is a great plan. Thank you. It sounds like, I know last meeting, there was mention of like FAQs, building pages. It sounds like we have a good set of questions of just like, how did we get here, right? Are we planning to answer any of those? Is there a timeline on that budget page link, that FAQ link or page maybe starting to come up for the public?
Yes, we are. We just need to get the answers for them first. We have like a bunch of them that have been organized well, but we want to make sure that we don't have any repeats. And then to also get answers from some of the top experts. Do you think that sounds fair?
Yes, and I think it's a goal to get at least a start on that as soon as possible. We need content for the website, but people they've asked the question now. They want the answer yesterday. So we understand that.
Are there any further questions for Claudia or Jillian? If not, thank you very much, and thank you for your continued work. Um, Draft budget reductions, Dr. Radish?
I will remove those from the agenda because I'm not ready.
So that brings us to board action items, and there was we need to adopt the resolution 2024-5, the budget adoptions, so that we have a budget for next year. And I think this is in your packets with the proposed motions.
Point of clarification, this looks like there's 3 motions we need to go through for this.
Yeah, there's one, there was the 2024 one, and then there was one that was going to supplement for 23-24, 2 budget ones.
No, okay. No, I get that, but on this, there are 3 motions and 2 of them have to do with the tax rates. And so I'm just clarifying, it looks like we have 3 technical motions.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
and all 3 need to be made.
Okay.
I move to adopt the 2024-2025 budget as presented.
Second.
Are there any discussions, questions? If not, all those in favor? Okay, carries by everybody that's here. Second motion?
I move to have the permanent tax rate on ad valorem taxes of 4.6616 per thousand be applied to the taxable property within the district as determined by the Yamhill County, Clackamas County, and Washington County tax assessors for the 2024-2025 year.
Any discussion or questions?
Second.
Oh, it's second, yes.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? Okay, that motion carries. Motion number 3?
I move to levy the ad valorem taxes for debt services at $6,816,600.
Second.
Is there any discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor? Okay. The next one is the resolution 2024 6 adopts supplemental budget for fiscal year 2023-24. And you have some things to say.
This is to make sure that we are within appropriations for both the general fund and for the special revenue fund. We've made some movement between appropriation levels, and we're required to do this.
Okay, I can, any questions for her? Otherwise, I'll read the resolution. Whereas ORS 294.471 provides for making a supplemental budget for an occurrence or condition which had not been ascertained at the time of the preparation of a budget for the current fiscal year, which requires a change in financial planning, and whereas after adoption of the budget, Newburgh Dundee Public Schools need to transfer budget authority in the general fund from contingency to both support services and transfers. Whereas after adoption of the budget, Newburgh Dundee Public Schools need to transfer budget authority in the special revenue fund from support services to transfers. That's the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
Can I ask a point of clarification? There's a supplemental page, it looks like, so just to make sure we understand this. We are taking $1.13 million out of contingency in the general fund and moving 1.16071 to support services and 13,929 to transfers. So I don't have to be doing that.
Yes,
The other one's a little more straightforward, 1-to-1. So,
right.
okay.
So any further questions? Or is there a motion?
I move to adopt resolution 2024-6 supplemental budget for the fiscal year 2023-2024 as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, that carries. The next action item is a contract that Dr. Radish will explain.
Thank you. As the board is aware, on June the 12th, we experienced some unusual activity within our computer network. And due to concerns as to what we found, I immediately contacted local authorities and federal authorities, and it was recommended that we contract with a firm to do the forensics necessary to know what we don't know. So I'm recommending to the board that the board approve a contract which I signed due to the emergency. And the contract estimated costs currently are approximately $165,000. And the scope of the agreement from Booz Allen and Hamilton is attached to your document list.
Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I believe when we talked about this before, because that's a pretty hefty price tag, but you said that is some of this being able to be covered by some type of insurance or something, and we only have to pay a certain amount, and if so, does that cover this, or is this outside of that other
The
thing we talked
district,
with?
the district has an opportunity to recover probably most all of our costs, unless we find something unusual.
Okay.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I move to approve the contract with Booz Allen Hamilton Inc. as presented.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Excuse me, motion carries. Excuse me, you want to close?
We have our July 9th, is our regular session for the board meeting. And then, the meeting's adjourned. Thanks everybody for coming.